Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. This week I'm going to show you guys 3 of my most popular furniture flips to date so far, whether you're needing ideas for your own flips or inspiration for something in your home. With recently moving, I haven't had much time to flip furniture these past few weeks. However, I have a lot of new viewers since I've done these flips, and I thought it would be really fun to see how far I've come as a furniture flipper and also in the filming and production of my YouTube videos. If you guys like this type of content, please make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe down below, as it really does help my channel grow. Most of these videos are from back in 2020, so make sure to go ahead and check out one of my more recent videos just to see how far I really have come. I hope you guys enjoy this video and can maybe even laugh with me a little. Now let's get started on turning this hutch into a modern coffee bar. Making over this hutch. My goal for it is to turn it into a coffee bar and update it because it is outdated. Color is not very in anymore. But what I do really like about this is that this comes off completely, so we can work on it as if it's 2 separate pieces and then put it all together as one at the end. And it's also Broyhill. I've done a few pieces from Broyhill and it is a really good quality brand. So I know that this piece has good structure and bones. It just needs to be updated and fit into a more modern style home. So we're gonna get this big part, the top part, off, and we're gonna start by taking out the hardware. Alright, so you guys may be wondering why I am not taking this outside, and that's because we are not going to be sanding down this piece. We will have to sand a little bit just to fill in the hardware holes, but other than that, this is not going to require any sanding, and that is because in today's video we're going to be using the paint Beyond. I'm going to have more details about this paint later in the video. Alright, so we're going to remove the hardware now. There's not that many pieces, so it should be pretty quick. It's 2023 Heather here. You'll hear me pop in every now and then. These videos are so cringy for me to watch. You can tell that I'm clearly so uncomfortable on camera, but I think it could be good for you guys to see and maybe even inspire you to start a YouTube channel anyways if you've been wanting to but you've been nervous to. It just takes time for you to get more comfortable on camera, but after a while you can then go back and watch them later and just laugh at yourself like I am. I honestly have not watched these videos back because it is pretty embarrassing, but everyone just starts somewhere, you know? So the hardware is all out, and I did get asked the question of why don't you clean before you take the hardware off? And right here is a perfect example. You can see if we would have cleaned the piece off first, we would have missed all of this dirt and grime that was on underneath the hardware. So that's why we take the hardware off first and then we clean. So that brings us into the next step, which is cleaning. Alright, so I got my go-to cleaner in here, which is Dawn dish soap. It's really good at cutting the grease and the grime and getting everything off. That's why people use it for dishes, right? So I've got my microfiber towel here. I like to use this because it really grabs onto anything that is on the dressers or whatever you're cleaning off. So we're gonna get started and start cleaning the piece off. Alright, and we can't forget about this piece either, so we're going to go ahead and clean this one as well. Don't forget to go back and rinse it all off so that the soap isn't staying on the piece. Alright, now that that's done, let's get on to the next step. Alright, so we don't have to do this on every project, but I did mention that we were going to be filling in the hardware holes. And that is exactly what we're going to do. And I have the color changing wood filler by Minwax. This is the second type of wood filler I've tried. This is more so of a putty consistency. As you can see, it's more putty than it is like that wood color, the more grainy stuff. And I prefer this one over the other one because this one is so much easier to put on, and it actually lets you know when it's dry because it goes on pink. It's natural wood color once it's dry. So we're gonna go ahead and fill in the hardware holes because we are not going to be keeping the same hardware for this one. I'm just using a small putty knife. I got this at the dollar store. Super cheap, but I mean, it works really well. So it comes in handy, and we're just gonna start filling in these holes. Now, if you've never actually filled holes in, the way you do it is you grab a decent amount, probably more than you would need. You can see I have extra on here, and you shove it into the hole, like you push on it and shove it into the hole. And really what you're doing is just trying to shove more and more and more in there so that once it dries, it is level. So just keep pushing it in, shoving it in. Do your best to fill it up as much as you can the first time. Sometimes you do have to go back after it dries and do it a second time. So that's why you just want to make sure you do it really good and you fill it in from the start. So now that all of these are filled in, we have to wait for it to dry. It says it can dry in like 30 minutes. It depends on how thick it is, but we will know when it's dry once the pink is now a tan color. But the nice thing is that because these are two separate pieces, we can get started on the top part. All right, so typically this would be the stage where we start sanding, and we will have to do a little bit of hand sanding on the hardware holes, but nothing too extreme where you have to go out and sand the entire surface so that the paint can adhere to it. And that's because we are going to be using Beyond Paint today. I chose the color Pewter. It's a dark gray color. Oh yeah, see, it says no stripping, no sanding, no priming. So perfect, you guys can see it right on the top there. I'm gonna get started by painting this piece first, and then once the hardware holes have dried on the bottom section, we'll hand sand and get to painting on that one. All right, we are opening this up and gonna get ready to use it. This paint is a little bit thicker. Usually when I use thicker paints, I will put water in it, but this, for Beyond Paint, it says not to because it does have that priming and top coat part to it. So I don't know, it just screws it up, I guess, but we're not gonna add the water in it. We're gonna paint it when it's this thick. So it's probably gonna just plop into here. We'll see. You guys, like, you can literally see it's like gelatin consistency. No. All right, I'm gonna start with that for now. Okay, so before we get started on painting, I do want to mention that I got this piece at Goodwill for $29.99. When I bought the piece, I didn't realize that it didn't have a top. This is the first time I have ever done a Hutch. So when I came home, I was kind of disappointed to see that, like, the top was missing. You know, the top was missing. But apparently, Hutches always have this to protect your ceiling, or at least that's what I've heard, that they have it for that reason. But I guess it makes sense because it's a lot higher and you don't really see it. So I just thought I would mention that because I thought it was so funny because I had no idea. But now I do, so we're gonna get started on painting this top part. It's a weird consistency. I'm not used to it. Let's start here. It definitely has a strong smell to it. I maybe wear a mask. I'm not going to, but you might want to because it is a pretty strong smell. I think now is a good time to mention that I'm not going to worry too much about these back parts because we are going to be adding peel and stick to it. So if I get it on, that's okay because the peel and stick will just cover it up. Okay, now that the first coat is on everything, we're gonna move over to the bottom piece and we're gonna start sanding those little bits that filled in to cover the hardware holes. So as I mentioned before, Beyond Paint doesn't require any sanding prep work other than cleaning, but because I did fill in these holes, there is an extra amount of roughness and like an extra layer of stuff on top. So I am going to be taking 100 grit sandpaper and just smoothing out the surface so it's ready for the Beyond Paint. I want to show you guys the wood filler so that you can see what it looks like after it's dry, because like I said, it goes on pink and then it dries a normal wood color so that you know that it's dry. So this is what the wood filler is supposed to look like once it's dry. You can tell that it's the natural color instead of the pink color. So we're gonna go ahead with our 100 grit sandpaper and just smooth this out. All right, so just like that, everything is all smooth and we're gonna go ahead and take these drawers out. Now that that has been taken care of, we can continue to paint on this bottom section. All right, now that the first coat is on everything, all we have to do is wait for the paint to dry. So the first coat is now dry and I really like the coverage. I barely used any paint because it was so thick that I'll be able to use it on several projects. But we are gonna go through and scuff sand this with 120 grit sandpaper because with it being such a thick product, it is a little bit, it's not as smooth as I would like it. So before we get into the second coat, I'm gonna make sure to scuff sand it and try to make it level and smooth before we do that. So we're gonna get started on that. And the point of sanding this is not to take that layer of paint off. It's just to make sure that everything is smooth and there are no bumps before you get started on the next coat. So again, we're not trying to take the paint off. As always, we're gonna have to wipe this back so that this extra sand or sawdust doesn't get into the new coat of paint. All right, we're starting on the second coat. I decided to flip this over because it'll be easier to get on the tops and the bottoms of these, and then we'll flip it back up to do the sides. But this is just an easier angle to be able to paint. So we're gonna get started on doing that. Okay, Now that the second coat is on, all we have to do is let this dry. And because we don't need to have a top coat on, we're gonna let it dry and get started on putting the peel and stick wallpaper on. Okay, so as I mentioned before, we are going to be putting wallpaper, peel and stick wallpaper on here. So this is the design that I chose for it. I think the black and the white floral design will look really good with the dark gray. So I already measured this out. All you guys have to do is measure the lengths to be able to put this in. So as you can see here, it's not it's not always going to be the most perfect, but it's as good as it needs to be to look uniform and look nice. So there's going to be a little bit of overhang, and that's fine. Once we get it in, we'll be able to take that out. But we have it all measured up, so now I'm going to start peeling off the backing of this. And when I'm peeling it off, I'm only going to be doing a few inches because I don't want to overwhelm myself with the rest of it. And I've got a card here to be able to keep the bubbles out. So I'm just going to line it up the best that I can. Then I'm going to take from the back here and pull this way so that more of it is coming out and I'm able to lay more down. And again, I'm only doing a little bit at a time because I want to do my best to keep these bubbles out. So you can see that I'm just starting to lay this down like that. It's okay if you get a little bit on the edges because you can always take that out once you're finished. But the most important part is just getting it on without bubbles. I remember this video was filmed back at my Stillwater apartment, and when I started my YouTube channel, like at this point, I thought that like you had to have someone film you, that your content would be so much better if someone was filming you and the camera was always moving rather than just sitting on a tripod. And at this time, my brother was actually staying with me and Avery, and so I literally begged him to do the camera work. And it's just funny looking back at it now because the production of my videos on a tripod now is so much better than what it is here in this video when I was begging my brother to film this for me. Obviously, he's not a cameraman though, and that shows, but it's just funny because I remember I thought I had to have someone filming me. Now have the Hutch, the finished Hutch, up against the staging wall. It is 100% done, and I think it looks stunning. I love the floral peel and stick that is on there. I think it matches so well with the gray and the black knobs. I think that someone is going to love having this in their house as a coffee bar, or they might keep it a Hutch. But I think that it turned out amazing. This is definitely one of my favorite projects. I think the outcome turned out so beautiful. Though I feel like Hutches are a little bit harder to do because you have to paint on the inside of I had to paint on the inside of the top here. I think it turned out really beautiful and it was definitely worth the work. This peel and stick wallpaper work would not fly with me anymore, but overall this Hutch makeover was pretty cute. So let's move on to the next makeover now. This is the piece that we are going to be working on today. It is definitely a vintage piece and an interesting one at that. There are 5 drawers total. The top 2 have these interesting details and the bottom have these built-in handle drawers. It is 100% wood and in pretty good condition other than it's super short and it smells like smoke.
So let's get into it.
So this is the dresser that we're going to be working on today. My boyfriend actually picked it up and he had gotten it for free, but we didn't notice that it had a terrible smoke smell when we were there until we got it back here, and now it's stinking up the whole workshop. So I thought this would be a great learning opportunity to show you guys how to get smoke out of a dresser. So the first thing that we're gonna do is clean the piece. We have to clean it real good, so I'm gonna be using Dawn dish soap. And then there are another few methods that you could try, like sprinkling baking soda just about everywhere. That should get rid of the smell. Otherwise, I've heard mixing vinegar in with water and washing it down that way also works. But we just don't have the time for that, so instead of taking it out, we're gonna be sealing it in, and I will show you guys exactly how to do that once we get to that step. But first, right now, we're gonna start with cleaning. I like to use Dawn dish soap, so that is what we're gonna be using in this video. Now with only cleaning the top and the side, I want to show you guys how yellow this water is. So if you look at it, you guys know what regular water looks like, but all of this yellow, that is from the cigarette smoke that we smell. So we're gonna try to get as much of it off as we can, but I really don't think this has been sitting in the house for years. So we're not gonna be able to get it all off. When it comes to wood and smoke, wood is very porous, so the smoke can really just soak into the wood, and unfortunately, we'll be able to get what's on the outside out and even the stuff that's on the inside of the drawers, but we won't be able to go through that wood and get it out, so we're gonna have to seal it in. Let's get this piece as cleaned off as we can, and then we'll get started on sealing it all inside.
When I tell you I spent about an hour cleaning this piece, I am not kidding you. I made sure to clean as much as I could. I went over the same spot several times. I did the inside of the drawers, the outside of the drawers. I did the inside of the dresser and all, just about everywhere.
All right, this is the second time that I've had to switch out this water. I'm going to do it for a third time, and then we're gonna get this piece outside because I cannot stand this smell anymore.
Now that this piece is as cleaned off as it's gonna get, I went to Lowe's and picked up this Zinsser Bullseye Shellac Clear Sealer, and I got this piece outside and just went to town on spraying it. I sprayed it everywhere. Even the places you wouldn't think to put a sealer, I put it. This includes the tops, the sides, and the inside of the dresser. You want to make sure that you're spraying this in a well-ventilated area. That is why I decided to do it outside. I would also recommend putting a mask on. I definitely should have had a mask on for this, especially since it was a little bit windy. So definitely get one of those on if you are doing something like this. And I know that it looks like it's super cold outside with the snow, but it was actually warming up, so it was a perfect weather to do this. As far as how much do you want to use, I used 2 cans just as reference for this. I used more than you would think you would want to be using for this because you want to try to spray every square inch, because if there is one part of the dresser that doesn't have this stuff like sealing it in, you're still going to be able to smell that smoke smell. So I just seriously sprayed on top. I sprayed everywhere. You'll notice that I even sprayed the back of the dresser. I know it's not the prettiest. This actually did show up. It lightened a little bit, but because people are usually putting their dressers to the back of a wall, I wasn't too worried about it. But I definitely did spray this too because the back smelled just as much as the rest of the dresser. And yes, the drawers too. I did everywhere from the fronts of the drawers, the inside of the drawers, even the back where the slide was. It dried very clear, so that I was really happy about that.
Alright, so we've now gotten this piece back inside. I did let it stay outside overnight just so that I could make sure that it dried, and the smell of that product is very strong, so I didn't want that in here. So we left it outside. It's nice and dry. It dried clear as if it's not even on it, but I can 100% say that the smell is definitely sealed in. I am not smelling that any longer, so that is perfect. While it was drying overnight, Avery, my boyfriend, if you don't know who he is, also got the dimensions to make a custom base for it. So there is now a custom base on it, just adding a little bit more height to it because it is such a short dresser. So the next step is going to be painting, and because we are going to be using Beyond Paint today, we do not have to prime this piece. That is also why I decided not to sand as well, because with Beyond Paint, you don't actually have to sand. So this piece is ready for some paint. So I'm gonna go get the paint ready, and in just a few seconds, we'll be ready to go. Okay, so now that I have everything ready to go, we are going to get started on painting. Like I said, we are using Beyond Paint here. I chose the color Sage Green. I feel like greens have been doing really well in my market, and probably yours too. So we are going to go ahead with this Sage Green color. Now with Beyond Paint, you don't have to sand, you don't have to prime, and you also don't have to seal either. So that is why we're not actually priming this piece, and really we just have to do 2 or 3 coats of this and then we're done. Beyond Paint recommends rolling this on, so I've got my roller here, and I just like to put aluminum foil over my tin here so that it's easier when I'm picking it up. I don't have to wash it out, I just pick it up and throw it away. And then it also recommends in the spots that you can't actually roll, you use a chip brush. Now, I don't have a chip brush, but as long as I'm using the tapping motions, I think we'll be okay. And I'll let you know towards the end of the video if I recommend that you actually use a chip brush and this is not the best alternative. We will see. But otherwise, I'm just gonna start pouring this in and get ready to paint. Now, I'm gonna be cut off a little bit so you can see right here, but this paint is a lot chunkier than you might think. So when you open it up, don't be alarmed when it's all chunky, because that's actually how it's supposed to be. It's a lot thicker than most paints that you may be used to. So
There is also a slight odor to it. It's a lot stronger, but don't be alarmed by that either. That is normal. So we're just gonna pour some of that out. You can tell it's a little bit chunkier. So if you look there, it kind of just looks like a glob of paint, but that's normal. I know a lot of people get really worried about texture when it comes to rolling, and especially like doing the tapping motion for a chip brush. But I want to tell you guys that I have used Beyond Paint several times at this point now, and it always dries with a very smooth texture. Now, if you look up close, like super close, just like a few inches away, you may see a little bit of texture, but just step back a little bit and you won't see any of that texture at all. I love smooth finishes, and so I still approve of this. At this point, I decided to take all of the drawers out just so that I would have easier access to not only doing the drawers when it came time to that, but also parts of the dresser where the drawers actually covered up. I wanted to make sure to get that so that if the drawers were ever taken out by its new owner, it looked cohesive and done all around. As much as I love how cool these drawers are, it did not make it easy to actually paint them. I decided for this one to just kind of roll as much of it on, but then I had to tap kind of underneath the handle part because you would still be able to see that. For these more curved pieces, I just kind of tapped around the curved edges, and then I was also able to get away with just kind of painting on as normal the middle flat sections. But if you do find that the paint is kind of rubbing off, because that can happen when you're doing the swiping motion, and that's why Beyond Paint recommends the tapping, just go ahead and tap through that, and that should be just fine as well. This first coat dried in about 2 hours, so after 2 hours I was able to get started on the second coat. It dried super smooth, so I didn't have to sand in between. But after this, I'm pretty much done with this project. This dresser has no handles, so I don't have to put those back on. So as soon as I'm done with this second coat, we can get into the final reveal. If you guys like this type of content, please make sure you give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you aren't already, as it really helps my channel grow. Otherwise, I will see you guys in the next video. I actually really love how this one turned out. I remember it sold right away and for a pretty high price. I'm just a little bit disappointed in the right leg there where you could see the sticker, but moving on to the next project. Okay, so this is the piece that we're working on today. I actually came in a set of 3. It had this dresser and a tall boy dresser as well as a smaller nightstand. So I will be able to make those over in different videos, but we're going to work on this one today. The first step is going to be taking off the hardware. I do want to mention that I got this set of 3 for $75 off of Facebook Marketplace. It was originally like $150, but the woman just really wanted it gone, so I was able to knock it down that much. And when we're taking out the hardware, we want to make sure to keep it all in the same spot, so if we ever do need to come back to it, we can, and there's no missing pieces. However, chances are I actually won't end up using this hardware ever again on any other pieces, so I have been thinking about reselling them back onto Marketplace, but I don't know if anyone would really actually buy it. Let me know in the comments down below if you guys have done that, because I'm curious to know. Once all of the hardware was off and the drawers were out, I started cleaning with Dawn dish soap. I want to make sure to clean just about everything because I don't know what type of dust was on there, but I do know that she had just cleaned it off with that lemon scented wood spray or wood cleaner, so I wanted to make sure to get all of that off. So I was just making sure to do that with the dresser as well as the dresser drawers. In a few seconds here, you're going to see how cool this wallpaper is, and it's not in perfect condition, but I don't think I'll ever be able to find something that, unique. So I'm going to roll with it. I'm going to keep it. It's in good enough condition, but look at how just awesome and how unique this is. After everything was cleaned off, I started getting ready to prime. I like to use the Zinsser 321 primer. I just figure that it is the easiest to go on, and I like using it with a roller. If you guys are interested in this primer, I highly recommend it, and I'll leave it in the description box down below. I also highly recommend that you get the gallon size because it gives you the best bang for your buck, but if you want to try it out, there are quart sizes as well. Now, I don't really have much else to say. I'm priming, so I'm going to let you guys listen to the music and just watch me get this on. All 3 of these videos were either from 2020 or 2021, so it's obviously been a while. A lot of time has passed since then. I had maybe 1,000, close to 2,000 subscribers at that point, and now we are at 7, almost 8, and I just can't believe that we have almost 8,000 subscribers. So again, if you guys like this type of content, make sure to subscribe down below. I actually have a goal of trying to reach 10,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and I can't do that without you guys, so I really do appreciate you guys, and thanks for being here, honestly. Okay, now that all the primer is on, we let it dry, and this is the most exciting part of the video. I am trying out a new to me type of paint, and it is Restoration Bronze from Melange. I have heard so many good things about Melange paint, but I have yet to try it up until this point, and let me just tell you, it did not disappoint. But we're getting this ready to go to get onto this dresser. I'm making sure to shake it up real good, and let me just tell you how much I love the fact that it's in a jar. I always love putting my paint into a smaller cup just to divide it, so I know that when I actually finish this jar, I could use it as like a reusable solo cup like I used to, but this is way better for the environment. Within these first 2 strokes of putting the restoration bronze on, I can tell you that I was already in love. I already bought another thing of Melange paints in restoration bronze just because I love how much of a unique the color is. It's gray, but it's not. It's green, but it's not. It's bronze, but it's not. It is just an amazing color, and I'm definitely in love. This is going to be probably my new favorite. Once I got the first coat onto the dresser completely, I started on the drawers, and after I had let that dry, I realized that I didn't fill in the hardware holes, and I definitely was not keeping the hardware for this piece, so I had to do it a little bit backwards, but I did go in with my wood filler. This is just the changing color wood filler. It goes on pink, and then it dries on a tan color. My package has gotten a little bit oxygenated, so it is not as pink as it used to be, but that doesn't bother me because it is still soft and it still dries hard and does exactly what it's supposed to do. I like to use a putty knife to fill in these hardware holes, and you're gonna see that, of course, when you start to fill in holes, you also start to see all of the nicks that are on the drawer fronts and the dresser, especially when you have that first coat of paint on. So although it's not ideal, sometimes you just have to go back and start filling in those little grooves. I went to town. Once I saw one, I saw 1,000, and that's just the way it went. Everything dried up nicely in about 4 hours, so I started by sanding it with a 220 grit sandpaper, I believe. Typically I would take this outside to sand, but it was so dang cold out that I've got a feeling I'm going to be doing a lot of sanding inside, and although it's not the best, it's what I've got, and that's all I can do with this Minnesota weather. So we're going to be sanding these pieces down, and don't worry, I'll clean up. I also used a sanding block when I could. I think that helped a lot more, and I got this at the dollar store, and it didn't tell me what type of grit it was, but I could tell it was a high grit because it's not very sharp, so I went ahead and did that as well. I just found it a little bit easier. As I just said, I definitely have to clean up all of this dust off the floor. You don't want to leave that laying around when you're about to apply wet paint. It'll just get into the paint and it'll be a big mess, so I'm brooming all of this up and getting it out of the way. This is just going to be another step during the winter in my furniture flipping process because I don't have a garage, I don't have a shed, I've got this back room and a backyard, and that's not going to work with Minnesota. As soon as that was cleaned up, we started with the second coat, and I didn't feel I needed to do a scuff sand around the entire piece, just the pieces, just the spots where the wood filler was. This paint dried on really smooth, so I didn't make it a concern and just went straight into the next coat. I love to see that this second coat was going on just as smooth as the first one, and that's always a good sign. I had to let the second coat dry for a couple hours, but once it finally was dry, I was able to get Avery outside to start building the base. He's right now just measuring what needs to be chopped off so that the base can be level on the bottom of the dresser. He does the bases, he builds them. I'm not 100% comfortable with those big power tools quite yet. It's a learning process, and I'm just really watching him and learning from what he has been doing. So eventually I'll be able to, but for now he's the one doing them. From my understanding, he just takes those bottom decorative pieces off and then he starts building the base. The length is 5.5 inches for this piece, so he'll do the 2 front pieces with the angle, the 45-degree angle, and then he'll do 2 back pieces without the angle, but regardless, all pieces are 5.5 inches long. You can see a little bit of the base built there, but it's time to put the top coat on. I had to go ahead and buy Melange's clear matte top coat as well. I figured if I'm trying out a new paint, I might as well try their top coat as well. So I'm making sure to mix that up, and I was actually able to finish all of the Restoration Bronze with my other 2 pieces from this set that I'm not showing in this video, but stay tuned for another video. And I'm going to use the empty jar and use the paint that is left over. There's a little bit of paint left over in that jug, and put the top coat in it just because I like to use a little bit of the paint color with the top coat. So you're going to see me doing that here. I'm going to shake it up real quick one more time and we can get started on putting the top coat on. To apply it, I'm using a sponge brush here. I usually just use a regular brush, but I figured I might as well try it with the sponge brush to see if I can get the least amount of paint strokes possible. It worked out really well, and the top coat is drying nicely, so we are ready to get into the final reveal.
Try to make it new. You can't fight it when it feels so true.